The vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, known for its beauty and bounty, stretches out like a shimmering blue canvas. This ocean, teeming with marine life and dotted with islands, has been a vital artery for global trade for centuries. Ships from all corners of the world traverse these waters, carrying goods that fuel economies and connect cultures. Yet beneath this serene surface lies a dark and turbulent undercurrent. It harbors a dark secret: Somali piracy. This phenomenon has captured the world's attention, not just for its audacity, but for the complex web of causes and consequences it represents. These modern-day buccaneers, armed with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades, have become the stuff of legends, inspiring fear and fascination in equal measure. Their daring raids on massive cargo ships and oil tankers have made headlines, turning them into both notorious criminals and folk heroes in some narratives. Are they ruthless criminals holding the world to ransom, or are they desperate men pushed to the brink by circumstances beyond their control? This question has sparked intense debate among policymakers, scholars, and the general public alike. The answer, like the murky depths they operate in, is far from clear-cut. The waters they navigate are as treacherous and unpredictable as the lives they lead. Their actions, while undeniably criminal, are often rooted in a desperate struggle for survival in a region plagued by poverty, lawlessness, and political instability. This essay delves into the heart of this complex issue, exploring the motivations and justifications of Somali pirates. We will peel back the layers of this phenomenon to understand what drives these men to risk their lives on the high seas. We will examine the historical context that birthed this phenomenon, tracing its roots back to the collapse of Somalia's government in the early 1990s. The ensuing chaos created a power vacuum that left the country's coastline vulnerable to illegal fishing and toxic waste dumping by foreign vessels, which devastated local fishing communities. The arguments for and against their actions are as varied as they are passionate. Some view the pirates as defenders of their territorial waters, while others see them as opportunistic criminals, exploiting a lawless environment for personal gain. We will also explore the impact their activities have had on Somalia and the world, the economic toll on global shipping, the human cost of hijackings, and the ripple effects on local communities are profound and far-reaching. Through this exploration, we aim to shed light on the multifaceted reality of Somali piracy, moving beyond simplistic labels of heroes and villains to understand the human stories that lie beneath the surface. These are stories of men caught in a web of poverty, exploitation, and violence, where choices are often made out of sheer desperation. This is a tale of desperation, greed, and survival played out on the high seas, where the line between right and wrong becomes blurred in a maelstrom of poverty, exploitation, and violence. It is a story that challenges us to look deeper, to understand the forces that drive men to such extremes, and to seek solutions that address the root causes of this maritime crisis. To understand the rise of Somali piracy, we must first journey back in time to the years following the collapse of the Somali government in 1991. This period marked the beginning of a tumultuous era for the Somali people, as the central authority disintegrated, leaving a power vacuum that plunged the nation into chaos and lawlessness. The once thriving coastal communities found themselves vulnerable and exposed, with no government to enforce laws or protect their interests. With the nation plunged into chaos and lawlessness, foreign fishing vessels, taking advantage of the lack of a functioning coast guard, began to exploit Somali waters with impunity. These vessels, hailing from various countries, saw an opportunity to fish in the rich, unprotected waters of Somalia without any fear of repercussions. They operated with sophisticated equipment and large trawlers capable of catching vast quantities of fish, far beyond what local fishermen could manage with their small traditional boats. These illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing activities depleted fish stocks, depriving local fishermen of their livelihoods and threatening the fragile marine ecosystem. The once abundant fish populations began to dwindle, leaving Somali fishermen with empty nets and empty stomachs. The environmental impact was devastating, as the overfishing disrupted the balance of the marine ecosystem, causing long-term damage that would take years to repair. Adding insult to injury, foreign companies with little regard for environmental regulations, began dumping toxic waste off the Somali coast. This toxic waste included hazardous materials and industrial byproducts that contaminated the waters, further exacerbating the plight of the local communities. The pollution not only affected the fish, but also posed serious health risks to the people who relied on the sea for their sustenance. This reckless disregard for the environment further poisoned the waters, making fishing even more difficult and endangering the health of coastal communities. The once clear waters turned murky and toxic, driving away the remaining fish and leaving the coastal communities to grapple with the dire consequences. The health of the people deteriorated as they were exposed to the contaminated water, leading to a rise in illnesses and a decline in the quality of life. The Somali people, already reeling from the effects of civil war and poverty, saw their once abundant marine resources plundered right before their eyes. The civil war had already taken a heavy toll on the nation, displacing families and destroying infrastructure. The additional burden of losing their primary source of livelihood to foreign exploitation was a blow that many could not withstand. The fish markets, once bustling with activity, now stood empty, a stark reminder of the lost prosperity. With no government to protect their interests, a sense of anger and desperation began to brew. The local fishermen, feeling abandoned and betrayed, started to organize protests and voice their grievances. However, their cries for help fell on deaf ears as the international community largely ignored their plight. The abandoned coastal villages became symbols of the despair and frustration that had taken root among the Somali people. It was in this fertile ground of resentment and despair that the seeds of Somali piracy were sown. Young men facing a future with no prospects and driven by a desire to protect their waters and provide for their families began to see piracy as a viable option. What started as a desperate attempt to defend their rights and livelihoods soon evolved into a more organized and lucrative criminal enterprise. What began as a desperate attempt to protect their waters and livelihoods soon morphed into a lucrative criminal enterprise, drawing in young men eager to escape poverty and make a quick fortune. The allure of piracy grew stronger as the young men saw it as a way to fight back against the injustices they had suffered and to gain a sense of control over their destinies. The once peaceful fishermen had transformed into pirates, navigating the treacherous waters in search of foreign vessels to hijack, driven by a mix of necessity, anger, and the hope for a better future. While their methods are undeniably criminal, some argue that Somali pirates see themselves as guardians of their waters, protectors of their nation's resources against foreign exploitation. They often claim to be a coast guard of sorts, defending their territorial waters from illegal fishing and dumping. This narrative, while self-serving, holds a grain of truth. The pirates often target foreign vessels fishing illegally in Somali waters, demanding fines or licenses to operate. They argue that these payments are justified compensation for the theft of their resources. In their eyes, they are not pirates but rather patriots, fighting back against powerful foreign entities that have long exploited their nation's wealth. This narrative of resistance resonates with some Somalis who see the pirates as Robin Hood-esque figures, taking from the rich and powerful to provide for their communities. However, this romanticized view ignores the violence and criminality inherent in piracy and the devastating impact it has had on Somalia's international reputation and economy. The reality of Somali piracy is far removed from the romanticized image of freedom fighters protecting their waters. While some may have initially been motivated by a desire to defend their resources, the lure of vast sums of money from ransoms quickly turned piracy into a highly organized and brutal criminal enterprise. Somali pirates are notorious for their daring hijackings, often targeting large cargo ships and oil tankers traversing the busy shipping lanes of the Indian Ocean. They take hostages, demanding millions of dollars in ransom for their release. These acts of piracy are not victimless crimes. Hostages often endure weeks or even months of captivity, living in fear for their lives and suffering psychological trauma. The violence inherent in piracy has also claimed many lives, both of hostages and pirates themselves. The vast sums of money involved in ransom payments have fueled corruption and violence within Somalia, further destabilizing the region and hindering efforts to establish peace and stability. The rise of Somali piracy has cast a long shadow over the Horn of Africa nation. What began as a desperate measure by local fishermen to protect their waters from illegal fishing and toxic waste dumping has evolved into a complex and dangerous enterprise. This transformation has had far-reaching consequences not just for Somalia but for the entire region and beyond. While some communities may have benefited from the influx of ransom money, the overall impact on Somalia's economy and security has been overwhelmingly negative. The short-term gains have been overshadowed by long-term instability and economic disruption. Local markets have seen fluctuations in prices, and the social fabric of communities has been strained by the influx of illicit funds. The fear of piracy has led to increased shipping costs as insurance premiums for vessels traversing the Indian Ocean have skyrocketed. Shipping companies have had to reroute their vessels, leading to longer transit times and higher fuel consumption. This has not only affected the shipping industry but also the global supply chain, causing delays and increasing the cost of goods. This has had a ripple effect on the global economy, driving up the price of goods and impacting international trade. The increased costs are often passed down to consumers, leading to higher prices for everyday items. Additionally, the uncertainty and risk associated with shipping routes near Somalia have made some companies hesitant to engage in trade with the region. Within Somalia, piracy has hampered legitimate economic activities. The fishing industry, once a cornerstone of the local economy, has been particularly hard hit. Fishermen who once relied on the sea for their livelihood now face the constant threat of being mistaken for pirates or being caught in the crossfire between pirates and naval forces. Fishing, once a vital source of income and food security, has suffered as fishermen are afraid to venture out to sea for fear of being mistaken for pirates. This has led to a decline in fish stocks and has forced many to abandon their traditional way of life. The loss of this industry has had a cascading effect on local economies, leading to increased poverty and food insecurity. The insecurity caused by piracy has also discouraged foreign investment and hindered the development of critical infrastructure. Investors are wary of putting their money into a region plagued by instability and violence. This has stunted economic growth and left many areas without the necessary infrastructure to support development and improve living conditions. Moreover, the vast sums of money generated by piracy have fueled corruption and empowered warlords and militias, further destabilizing the country and hindering efforts to establish a functioning government. The presence of these armed groups has made it difficult for any central authority to maintain control, leading to a cycle of violence and instability that continues to plague Somalia to this day.